When I was in 5th grade, my teacher duct taped my chair to my desk so that I couldn't move it in or out or rock it or get up and do anything. And there had been a lot of other things like that, but that was the most extreme. I had been suspended at one point. They had suggested Ritalin to my mother. The thing was, I was a nice, happy kid. I was just curious. I liked school. I wound up getting a PhD, all these different things. And it was never that I was like punching other kids or something. I was just open-minded and creative and talkative. And, you know, that sort of thing just doesn't fit in the school system. Mm-hmm. And that's very obvious from the drug that they suggested to my mother, which is Ritalin. Mm-hmm. If you look up what Ritalin does, it suppresses the circuit for play. So it just makes you not feel all imaginative and playful and creative. It just like suppresses you, and it doesn't disproportionately affect hyperactive kids. So it's not curing an illness or treating some underlying thing. It's just making you less playful and more obedient, which is what is being looked for there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like when you're in the system, there are all these things that are trying to keep you to whatever they want you to be. Like they didn't want you to be open and creative and whatever. They just wanted you to follow the curriculum.
Yeah, whatever was wanted at that moment. Yeah.
It's interesting when it's enforced like that by teachers or principals. Like you said, you got suspended in different things.
Well, actually, I should clarify. Mm-hmm. They had put me up for suspension, and then my mom fought with them, just like she fought with them when they duct taped me to my chair. I'm glad she was on my side. Yeah. We talked about that a little bit in the first episode. My openness and creativity was able to grow because I had her on my side, and that encouraged me to be resistant in that situation, and I didn't let them break me. But please continue.
Yeah. It's crazy that there are enforcers in the system that do stuff like that try to keep you in just what they want. They don't encourage diversity and personality at all.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, I think some of the system itself does that.
A lot of it. Yeah.
There's you went to CCD, I went to Catholic school, and for Christians, you guys know the Beatitudes. And one of the big ones is the meek shall inherit the earth. So that's, the people who are introverted and agreeable will inherit the earth. The original Matthew 5:5 is actually makori prais otiafti klironomisusintin yin, which translates better to those who have power and know how to use it, but choose not to harshly will inherit the earth. Like someone who has a sword but keeps it sheathed in order to not use excessive force will inherit the earth.
Yeah, which is totally different. And yeah, public school itself was designed to make good factory workers. And you can see how people just lean on that. And you can also see the corruption of religion because the underlying work doesn't say the meek will inherit the earth. Of course, the soft will not inherit the earth. That's not how anything works.
Yeah.
The skillful who are compassionate and generous
yes.
do feel like the ones who inherit the earth. The ancient wisdom has the right answer, but the system has its own agendas.
Yeah.
And you have to resist.
Yeah, you have to be yourself. This is episode 4. We hope everyone had a wonderful Mother's Day. Welcome to the James and Rithika Show.
I think the idea of being yourself is a complex idea. A good measurement for your personality is the one that psychology has been using universally since the 80s. I learned it in high school. You probably did too. It's 5 scales across which personality is measured, usually with questionnaires and different things. Mm-hmm. And the reason that these 5 traits are used and these measurements are used is because they're very consistent. If you measure someone's personality this way and then measure it 10 years later, it doesn't really change. Maybe under trauma or drugs or something, but under normal circumstances, it doesn't really change. So it's 5 dimensions across which they measure personality. The first is openness to experience, which is how free thinking, inventive, creative you are.
Mm-hmm. And then there's conscientiousness, which is orderliness and industriousness. It's how well you can stick to a plan.
There's extroversion, which is how outgoing and energetic you are.
Yeah. And then agreeableness, which is how understanding, empathetic you can be.
Yeah, and then there's neuroticism, which is sensitivity to negative emotion, nervousness. I think people use the word neurotic commonly enough. So those are the big 5 personality traits. They're the model, the framework commonly used since the 80s in psychology for studies, to assess people for couples therapy, for assertiveness training for people who don't feel like they're getting ahead in their career. That's a more and more common thing in lots of different ways. And we recently took professional personality tests in preparation for the episode, and we'll put our personalities up on the screen. And I had taken one in high school. We had taken it in class, and my personality was basically exactly the same. And that's what you expect from these tests. They're very consistent, and they're very good predictors of certain things and certain extremes. If someone is very high in conscientiousness, for example, and very low in everything else, maybe 98 in conscientiousness, 2 in everything else, they're basically always conservative. Politically, they're basically always conservative. And if someone is very low in conscientiousness and very high in everything else, they're basically always liberal.
Yeah. Wow.
And there are people who are commonly one or the other that don't fall into those, but those are 2 examples. And it's a good thing to note. It's a good thing to note about yourself, and it's not right or wrong. We need all the different temperaments. You need the typically very conservative temperament to make sure the roads and the cities get built and everything goes forward in technology. And you need the liberal to make sure there aren't 10-year-olds being whipped and forced to work for 12 hours a day. You know, we all need people to be themselves. And if you're a religious person, you should absolutely believe that someone is made for a reason. You know, and maybe even if you're not, you're lucky enough that you can believe that in your framework.
Yeah. The assertiveness training is pretty interesting. You know, we started this episode, we put in the intro about how school was really trying to diminish our agreeableness, or rather the other way around, diminish our disagreeableness, and trying to make us form to what we were being told and formed to be kind of quiet and meek, essentially. And then later in life, for managerial positions, people don't have that anymore because it's been crushed by the system and the enforcers of the system to the point they need assertiveness training.
Yeah, we were reading about how openness, which is essentially the best measure for creativity and inventiveness, it's the reason I think I was able to get a PhD and that I currently have my career and everything. There is no statistically significant correlation between openness and grades. None at all.
Wow.
So how creative you are, how good you are at coming up with new ideas is not important to K through 12. It gets important later.
Yeah.
But it's not important. And you can see my agreeability level and why I didn't fit in school, even though later on I got a PhD, different things. Because the system, at least K through 12, is really fit for people who are training to be factory workers. And even in the school system, by the time you're through 12th grade, that's not the good strategy anymore. It's just a convenience for the system to have you be that way. But to be open is within reason the best thing you can be, as long as you're logical, as long as you're discerning, is, you know, you should be open to ideas from anyone. You know, some people say, as long as you're only open to the right people. That's ideological thinking. That's people in their echo chambers. I'd written down a quote here. Anyone can deal with victory. Only the mighty can bear defeat. That's right? That's right.
Yeah.
That's a quote from Adolf Hitler. One of the most horrible, evil people who you'd want to be nothing like. Does that mean the idea is wrong? No. And just because a great person says it doesn't mean the idea is right. And everybody is wrong about a lot of things all the time, even when they're trying to be right. And a lot of people aren't trying to be right. They're trying to manipulate you.
Yeah.
You know, so it's important to assess ideas, to develop who you are and to put them against your personality. And for some things, there's right and wrong. 2 plus 2 has to equal 4 if you're going to build something. But in terms of certain elements of how we should treat people, how we should develop society, you know, we align ourselves with killing is wrong, stealing is wrong. But in some other ways, there's room for different personalities to find a compromise where neither are correct.
Yeah, to at least have the conversation.
Yeah.
You can't just because you agree with a certain group of people doesn't mean you have to agree with everything they say. And it definitely doesn't mean that if you disagree, you just go along with it, because then who are you?
You have no voice at all. You're no one.
Yeah. You just become a copy of the people around you, and then you're not yourself. Because, in this current era, we have access to so many opinions, and we especially have access to so many opinions that are so much like ours.
Oh, yeah.
And so to be an ideologue and just to go along with whatever everyone else is saying, you don't have the opportunity to even develop your personal personality, your personal sort of identity. You see celebrities, you see, these people who are famous on TikTok or YouTube or whatever, and whatever they say, you just like idealize them. They're your idol. You don't want to challenge what they're saying. You, first of all, are not allowing for room for the fact that those people are obviously doing a lot of this for fame, for clout, for different things. And then if you just accept all of the ideas in a world where, extreme opinions are getting the most views, that's what gets people's attention. That's what gets the fight going. You're not absorbing opinions that are reasonable. You're not absorbing things that are developing your personal belief system.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah, so you should be listening to all opinions, but you should realize a lot are way too extreme. A lot are for the wrong reason. Some are meant to manipulate you. And some are people doing their best who are just wrong. Everybody's wrong at different times. Everybody's wrong. And of course you need other people and other people's ideas to develop yourself. Imagine if they just left you in the woods when you were born. Somehow you survived, but you never interacted with anybody's ideas. Obviously you need other people to develop. But like you're saying, if you just copy other people, that's not good either. It's the interaction. It's in hearing other people's ideas, deciding how you feel about them, digesting them, and spitting them back out. There was a really good example recently. A woman who had trained very hard, she was a college swimmer, she raced against a biological male, and that person won. And her opinion, at least in the thing I had read, was that, well, I'm glad that person could have their identity, even though they had been a biological male up until 6 months ago and just started taking hormones and seemed to have an advantage. This person thought that they deserved the trophy and they were like happy for them. And it didn't seem forced. It didn't seem like they were faking it.
Yeah.
And, I totally disagree with that. I think that person should have first place. But I look at a person like that. That's a person like my grandmother, like my mother, like you, someone who will work for 7 years for something, and to make someone happy will just give it away to them. And I want people to have that opinion. My favorite people have those opinions. I am so glad that angels like that girl exist, who are willing to give up a trophy to somebody to make them feel good. But I also think that it is good that there are people like me who feel that against their will, they should be forced to take first place because they deserve it, that they should be protected from a person that I believe is taking advantage of them. I think it's great that there are people who, in my opinion, see the world in a way that everyone has good intentions and everyone's being honest and everybody's being authentic about who they think they are and everything. That's wonderful. I'm glad you think that. I also know I could have easily defaulted to something very manipulative that manifests reality and convinces people that I have the best intentions if I don't. So I know that, as a person like me, a person with my personality traits, agreeable level 3 and open level, 98 or whatever it was, you have to understand that many people are being manipulative and many people don't have good intentions, and you have to... But someone like me then turning around and wanting to ridicule that girl for giving up her trophy, is she being a bad person? No. Is she being a bad person, that girl, by trying to make someone else feel good by not taking clout? That's the thing that really hurts, that people don't want to let other people be themselves. This episode is be yourself, but this episode could also be yourself, and then in parentheses, and let other people be themselves. And let even if you're selfish, it's better to have all the the opinions so that we can balance out and have the good world. Free speech worked here for a reason. America's great for a lot of reasons, but one of the big reasons is that at the top of our list is we got to talk about stuff. And speech needs to be free. Speech needs to be free because we're not going to figure anything out.
Yeah.
Writing and talking and going back and forth is just thinking.
Yes.
And if we all have to think in our own little bubbles and can't say out loud what we're thinking, we're not going to figure stuff out. There needs to be free speech, and that does mean letting other people say stuff you don't agree with. And you have to. And a lot of times they have the same intention you do. They just see it from a different point of view. There's very hard issues where people, I think, have a really hard time seeing this, but I know people who are anti-abortion because they believe a baby is being murdered and they want to save a baby, and that's really honorable. And I know people who think about it totally different and believe you're trapping a woman and forcing a woman to do something that she shouldn't have to do. And you know what? I understand that they disagree and they think the other side is doing something terrible. And one thinks you're tyrannizing women and finding excuses to, you know, uphold a patriarchy. The other thinks you're murdering a baby. Neither sees it that way.
Yeah.
If one thinks they're saving a woman, the other one thinks they're saving a baby, neither of them thinks they're doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
They're both good people who should not attack each other.
Yes.
They're people who maybe can work together, can have discussions, but you have to let other people be themselves and judge the heart. That's a religious concept that God judges the heart. And you would think that would be true. And who are we to judge people on? I mean, it's just stupid to judge people any other way, isn't it, than what they intend?
Yeah, it's very hard, I think, for people to see people with opposing opinions as, you know, people only have their own perspective. They think, if I thought the way that this person is thinking, it's because I'm doing something against what I feel is right. Therefore, I would be doing something wrong. Therefore, they are doing something wrong. They're not really like switching the perspective and seeing it actually from that other person's perspective.
And the people who are doing that the most are making the least progress in terms of the issues they care about, and they're just losing a lot of time. There was a song I think we quoted in a previous episode, Bob Dylan and Johnny Cash song, where they say, I know you're right for your side and you know I'm right for mine, but we're one too many mornings and 1,000 miles behind. It's that idea that you waited too long, you finally realize each other were both good people, and you just argued about nothing, and it's too late. And I see so much of that happening. We see families splitting up over political views and nonsense, and that is a version of just not being able to accept people for who they are, because I'll tell you what, 99.99% of the times, people have no power. They're not making political differences in the world. Families splitting up over politics aren't actually splitting up because one is making political change.
Yeah.
It's just like they're just arguing about nothing they have any control over. It's so crazy.
Yeah. And the family is very important. Having those opposing views in the family is very important. The same way we were saying, you know, you don't want to be a copy of the people that are online, the people that you idolize. You also don't want to be a copy of your family. You should have opposing views.
Yeah. And you should then be able to interact more with them over it. You should have more to say if you have differences and you can work things out. And it should be in your interactions with them that you figure out who you are and also find your identity. That's something else we were talking about recently. If you are trying to think of who you are and who you are to other people, being a mother, being a sponsor, being a godmother, things like this. These are like real ways to develop an identity, and those are the relationships through which you can develop real opinions and yourself and comfortably talk about stuff. And people who don't have that, you hear now, they're saying things, I'm a pansexual, gender fluid, two-spirit witch. I hope that's one that makes sense. You know, you'd be better off probably on a path where you end up a mother, or you end up a doctor, or you end up with something that, you know, is related to connecting to other people. A lot of the words that people are using are just related to self-identity, self-importance, self-pride.
Yeah, you have to be active in your community in a positive way. You have to understand that, you know, your self-esteem should come from how others feel about you in a way that's like, it should be the people that you affect directly in your life, your parents, your siblings, you know, the people who you surround yourself with. Are you trying to make them are you trying to make their lives better? Are you adding to their lives? Are you a good like person in your community?
Yes, I agree exactly. If you have super high self-esteem, but everybody you've ever met in your whole life seems to dislike you and not want to be around you, something might be off. Just like if everybody in your family and friend group seems to love you, you have broad connections, a great job, but you're sad and you have low self-esteem and you feel like you're terrible, something also might be wrong.
Yeah.
And, there are, of course, situations where you're in a completely pathological, environment where everybody around you is crazy. And, in the situation that society really deteriorates, the sane people will seem crazy, and the people who should have the highest esteem will feel the lowest. But in general, in most environments, and I think people can curate a reasonably healthy environment if they try to and foster good relationships, your self-esteem should be pretty much about, you should feel about yourself as good as other people feel about you.
Yeah.
Right?
There's a lot of fragmentation right now in society. And that's very difficult because it has put a lot of pressure on people to get a self-esteem from themselves. They're not interacting with other people. They don't feel like they have a community that's close by and that they're affecting. And so they're getting a lot of their information, ideas, and like praise from social media. And that's already not a good path to take, as we just spoke about. But then they're also, instead of saying, oh, I'm a good sibling, oh, I'm a good mother, oh, I'm a good daughter, oh, I'm a good, I'm just speaking in my own terms. But instead of saying all of those things, they've decided to focus internally, and all of that energy that it takes to affect other people's lives positively. I think people are changing their appearance, changing their hair 10 times a year, changing their, changing their identity, changing different things that aren't really making them happy, because your interactions with other people and the feedback and that stuff makes you happy. And that's where self-esteem and self-identity really comes from.
Yeah, and then there's even a layer past that where you can trick yourself into thinking you're interacting with people either through social media or through pretty empty social causes. Or, we've seen news stories where they have kids in elementary school parading around with climate change signs, but around their elementary school, like these kids can't possibly be doing anything. Like they're not affecting real change, but they're like 7 years old and they're talking about how if the planet dies, we die. So they're being affected.
Yeah.
And these are otherwise open, creative people probably who want, the ones who are really yelling about the cause. They really want something to do. It's very weird. You could explicitly crush a kid the way that I was describing them trying to crush me at the beginning of the episode, or you could just give them fake outlets for their energy, just like they do with people a lot in society. They let them worry about a lot of things that don't really matter, and you could see people worrying about things that don't matter all of the time. And now they're starting you so young, getting you involved in worrying about issues that people are protesting about for a decade straight. Nothing is significantly changing. Nothing is going. But, you channel people's energy into that, and then they won't affect their local community. They won't do the better things. They won't be disagreeable. They won't be loud. It's it's crazy. So not just do you have to seem like you're affecting your community yourself, but you actually have to make sure in a meaningful way you're connecting with other actual humans. My whole life, and I think about the things that mattered, it was the friends I had, the people I played sports with, when I made, my cousin my confirmation sponsor, when I was made a godfather. These are like the things that really mattered. The person you're talking to online, the group you're arguing with, these are not the same thing.
Yeah. And you can get really lost in that world, unfortunately. It can suck you in, and it hijacks just everything good about interaction in real life. It just takes that away. And then you see people starting to substitute real interaction with interactions with people on the phone and interactions on social media, because those, having the conflict, having two different personalities and having a conversation is not as easy as going online and finding people who have the same opinion as you. And it just sucks you in, and then you have no opportunity to really develop your personality.
Yeah. And a lot of even the groups that are out there in person are organized in ways that are so purposeful and so echo chambery. And, people who are organizing huge protests, people young people who are acting like they're doing something so meaningful, but that are doing something so destructive and short-sighted. There's a way that if you're interacting in your community and you're doing meaningful things and you're helping to build things and you're helping other people on maybe their house or with their job or something, that it will bear fruit in the future, that you're benefiting yourself today and yourself tomorrow, which is good because you are yourself today and you are yourself tomorrow and you are yourself 10 years from now. And I should be benefiting you today and you tomorrow and you next week. And that's another reason why everybody has to speak their ideas, because if everybody's just, oh, you're so great how you are, you're perfect, everybody's just sitting around telling each other you're perfect, then you're not going to get any better.
Yeah, why would you improve?
Yeah, and the person I can be a week from now is definitely a lot better than the person I am now, and I'd rather you push me toward the person I could be a week from now, and which is how I think we are with each other. We push each other toward the people we can be, rather than just sitting around telling each other how great we are about who we are all the time.
There's a quote that hell is where the person that you are meets the person you could have been.
Oh my God, I can imagine it is. The more that you're deficient in life, maybe even the best versions of us would still be sad if we could see how great we could have been. But no, to a person who's wasting their life, I can't imagine. And you had mentioned social media. That's a really easy way to waste your life. Getting involved arguing about politics, which can happen on or off social media. Getting overly involved in large, abstract social causes. It's really easy it's really easy to not have to change anything specific if you're just worried about something so big that you can't really change it, so you can just take shots here and there and a little bit of activism here and there and kind of control how much you input, and you're never really going to be judged on the output by yourself. You're never going to have to look at what you could have been, because you knew in the first place you couldn't solve climate change when you became a climate change activist at 7 years old and then continued to through your teenage years and everything, and saw nothing specific. You should have just invented one thing to remove pollution from the atmosphere or something, but you had a big idea. And there's just different ways of escaping, or just in the phone on
the
TikTok.
doom scroll and and social media in general, especially for young women, is a very dangerous place in adolescence. There are a lot of models and different things, and even for older women, there's a lot I've seen. I watch family channels a lot. And one of the women was talking about how she got a comment that other women feel like, or this one woman that commented specifically, feels like she can never get all of the things done. And she watches these videos and she feels like every other mom can get all of these things done, and she doesn't understand. Social media is cherry-picked perfection, and it's the most extreme in political spaces, is the most extreme behavior, because that's what gets attention. You have to understand that, we have this tool that is convenient. It does help you connect with people more, but it also really takes away from the human experience and makes you feel, it lowers your self-esteem if you're not playing into the clout and the different things. But then once you are, it hijacks your self-esteem in a way that isn't what that mechanism is made for.
Yeah. Hijacks your self-esteem, hijacks your time. That ties right back to the school thing. That's something people need to keep in mind. If a kid is on iPhones, iPads, TV screens 8 hours a day, and then at school they aren't, it's like someone in drug withdrawal. There's no chance. There's no chance.
Yeah.
And at developing your personality, and that's a kid, an adult will do the same thing. The idea is there's no chance of you developing your personality out in this place if those huge dopamine hits and that overstimulation you get from the phone becomes your norm. There's no shot.
Yeah.
Just like there's no shot at you ever developing your full ideas if you censor yourself. There's a lot of arguments nowadays about censorship, and social media is a great place where they censor a lot of things even before they get to you. You don't even realize what's being censored. Free speech, free thinking is how America got here, and it needs to continue. And people need to talk about things, and people need to have ideas, and people need to work them out. And when some can't be figured out, it needs to be formalized, and it needs to be discussed. And people need to be able to say things. And if somebody says something horrible that you don't like, then great. You know who you don't want to hang out with.
Yeah.
Fantastic. But you still need to have that idea out there so people can say why it's wrong. Otherwise, there's people in their heads who have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, you need to get off the phone and get out in life and figure something out. Or if you are working through it, you need to be working in a way that's developing your mind. Now, we're not trying to say there's nothing, you know, through screens that you can do to develop your mind, but you need to be working productively. You need to develop yourself. You need to be honest. You need to not censor yourself. You need to not let other people crush you. Don't give your kids Ritalin so that they can develop themselves or anything else. You know, why a lot of times are you even medicating a child because they can't sit still for 6 hours and just listen to someone else's ideas? I've never been able to do that. I can't do that now.
No.
I mean, what is wrong with that? When I've talked to other creative people in my life, people I published math papers with, started bands with, anything, and we discuss K through 12, we lament about it. None of them were able to, and they're the smartest, most successful people I know. Like, don't crush somebody because they can't do something that arbitrary. It's just arbitrary how we even wound up here, that the system was even like that. And then I guess the other one is the health gate. You know, you have to make sure that you're physically healthy enough to develop your ideas and your person. You know, don't censor yourself. Don't live in the phone. Don't copy other people. And also make sure you're healthy and alive enough. And we watched a video about that really, really scared us recently.
Yeah, there was a video by Dr. Shanna Swan, and she was talking about how phthalates, I believe is how you say it. There's a PH, I think, and different things in plastics really affect the health of adults, but especially fetuses. And that's huge. If you want to talk about abortion and if a baby is a baby before it's born, how about we talk about the things that we're putting in women's bodies before they have a baby and the way that it's affecting the baby?
Yeah, it's everyday products are affecting our personalities, our just so many things. I don't think we could get into it here, but it's important for people to keep in mind that for-profit companies that are making so many chemicals a day that everything you look at has 20 things on it you can't pronounce. Don't believe that everything is always in the control it should be.
Yeah, it's hard to understand how, you know, in terms of personality, especially with the plastics, that's really hijacking the general public's conscientiousness. People just want to stay on the path. They want to know, like, nobody has the time to think about every single little thing that they're consuming. They want to stay on the path. They want to do their job. They want to be a good person. They want all of these things. And then all of a sudden you realize that the plastics that you're using are essentially poisoning you. It's not easy to have these personality traits that are very common and then understand that companies might hijack that and just go, oh, well, everyone's just going to keep going with the plan. They're just going to keep doing it. We're going to make it the easiest thing to have these plastics. It's not really fair. So, you know, you might be conscientious. You might be good at sticking to the plan. You might understand, but you also need to question the things around you. It's the same thing we're saying. If you have a certain personality trait, you need to be able to be open to discussion, be open to questioning.
And to working with other people's personality traits. You know, one thing that's really interesting that I think I had mentioned earlier, a lot of times in couples therapy, they have people's personalities tested to see how they fit with each other. And we were discussing our personalities and the differences which we want to highlight in each other and foster in each other. And one that's really interesting, and we can put our personalities back up on the screen right now, is that you are very agreeable and I am very disagreeable. And this is related to what we discussed about the swimmer earlier. How I'm glad that someone like yours opinion might be that we should include everyone, and I'm glad that my opinion is I'm cynical. You know what I mean? And I'm glad that those are our differences of opinion. And in this particular way, with how agreeable you are and how disagreeable I am, agreeableness 3 versus yours, we could easily have conversations our whole life where I just steamroll you and get my way if we're not careful. And we've learned how much being aware of that is really, really helpful.
Yeah, it's, you know, in general, men are very disagreeable and women are more agreeable. I think on average it's like 30 for men and like 60 for women. So we're both kind of on the more extreme scales even for our genders. But it makes sense that that would be the thing. You know, a woman or someone who gives birth or someone who is a mother should be agreeable. Infants take control of that. But there also can't be two parents who are both completely agreeable and just given to the child's going to become a narcissist.
Yeah, and you don't want a partner like me to, especially consciously, but even unconsciously, take advantage of your temperament, which is meant to be exploited by infants. Like, for the first 6 months of the infant's life, nothing is supposed to be questioned. And you have the temperament to always just feel like the infant is right. But women have that hijacked by men all of the time, who maybe are adult infants, but who maybe just are taking advantage. One very common thing that we were reading about recently is it's a very common trend for very agreeable, very smart women to get hired into middle positions and to not get a lot of credit for their work. And it's you could just imagine how it happens.
Yeah.
And you don't want anything like that to happen in work. That's why they have assertiveness training and things that people should take advantage of. But also, you don't want things like that happening in your household. If one of you feels a level of rudeness that gets triggered here when something is slightly rude, and one person doesn't feel anything until things are super rude, then you're not having the same experience. You need to think about that.
Yeah.
And you've also tried to take into account my level of open-mindedness. It's almost a joke in how we're able to notice these things, and I notice your level of neuroticism. And the thing that people should keep in mind is these personality tests, they remain consistent in your life. This is really who the other person is by nature. I took a personality test in high school. I was way less intelligent. I was way less life experienced. 20 years later, I took this one. It was essentially the same. To not want me to be as disagreeable as I am is to not want me to be me.
Yeah.
But also, I love people. I don't want people to get hurt. And so it's important for someone like me to take, if it takes even an extra day, to think through what's happening, how I might have hurt people's feelings. Just like it's maybe not your responsibility to do that. It's the opposite, to see that maybe people don't realize what they're doing. And I think that both are really, really important. And we all need to realize that the left is important and the right is important, and so many things are important. There are so many agreeable people, so many disagreeable people, so many neurotic people, all of us, and we're here for a reason, and we help. And the open people are the creative inventors, and the conscientious people can run the companies. They can keep a company open for 200 years, a conscientious person, but they won't invent the company in the first place. And an extroverted person could go out and do speeches. The introverted person can handle being inside working. We need all of these things. We need all of these things.
Yeah, there's a reason that it's yin and yang. There's a reason that those two things are not the two separate sides of the scale. It's a unity. It's something that works together. You have to have both sides of it in order to create like a moving wheel. But if you just have one and you just have the other, you're just going to stay stagnant and you're just going to go further and further into your poles. It's a little bit difficult because I think we've been talking in the political space a bit about how instead of balancing each other out, the two sides, especially extreme liberals and extreme conservatives, are swinging a pendulum back and forth and putting more force into it. And so instead of the political sphere kind of losing momentum, let's say, and evening out and coming to a moderate position, it's just going further and further, and the opinions are getting further, and the hatred is getting further. And that's the same thing that we were talking about, that social media has really exacerbated extreme behavior, like in extreme opinions. But it's also, people are pushing back so hard instead of saying like, oh, I want to work with this person who has the opposite opinion so we can come to a common ground. It's no, I want to overpower them.
Yeah, because I'm right. Neither of you are right. Different people are needed in different situations, and you all need to work together. No, it's absolutely right. And you need to keep in mind, it's to big money's advantage. It's to big government's advantage to keep people divided. So the tides are always going to move more and more in convincing people to be divided. People individually have to get more and more resistant, not less. They have to get better and better at learning to be themselves and accept other people for who they are and judge, are they trying to be a good person? Are they trying to look out for people? Are they trying to build rather than destroy? Or maybe are they just doing something that's neutral and doesn't matter either way? And almost never is anybody in your everyday life, I think, doing something wide scale and important enough on the political level that political or personality differences should be a disqualifier.
Yeah.
They never should be.
No.
I mean, even at the high level, even two opposite political candidates, it's to everyone's benefit for them to compromise. It is to everybody's benefit.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of my personality. I think I have agreeableness 98. It is kind of to my personality to assume and to say that it's a good idea to assume that you should think that everybody has good intentions. Like you should think when you have an opposing opinion to someone, to put yourself in their shoes in a real way and understand they're probably just trying to be a good person for their side, just like the song.
Yeah.
But then you also have to understand there needs to be a community behind you of people, or at least one person who's disagreeable and will say like, no, but be careful because manipulation and misinterpretation are two very different things.
Yeah, yeah. And try to judge the heart and try not to allow manipulation. And I think the best defense against manipulation is honesty. You know, encourage people around you to be honest and don't ever say things that you know to be untrue.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like maybe the number one rule for life, I think, if you're trying to figure out how things should be, figure out how you feel, figure out how to be yourself, figure out how to accept other people. Don't say things you know to be untrue, or don't say things you don't mean. Don't repeat something because someone else sounded cool saying it, and don't not say something because you think you're going to be ostracized from a group for how you feel. Anybody who's trying to figure anything out is open to all of the opposing opinions.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or maybe we both feel that way because we're both high in openness.
We'll consider it.
Okay. Yeah, just have a sword, know how to use it, but keep it sheathed.
Yeah, absolutely. If people are nice to you, you be nice to them. If someone seems like they're not being very nice, try to understand them, try to get through. You know, I have a real tough time going as far as to say the Christian thing of turn the other cheek. I don't know how I feel about that. I think that's very rough. I think people take advantage of other people a lot. I think being disagreeable has really benefited me a lot in life. But treat people with respect, be nice to other people, and allow other people to be different, and allow yourself to be different, and allow yourself to be who you are. And don't be someone you're not in order to fit somewhere. Don't say what you think your teachers want to hear or what anybody wants to hear. Honor and respect your parents, but don't tell them what they want to hear either. Everybody, try to figure out what's true.
Honesty is very important. Yeah, we have spoken about how I feel that if you think things, your actions will follow. And if you do things, your thoughts will follow. So if you're thinking things that you originally think are untrue, or originally you don't really fully agree with, but you're just trying to be agreeable, you will eventually feel that way.
Yeah, you bring yourself into alignment. Everybody knows that. If you're playing a sport every day, you're going to get a little better at it no matter what you're doing. And if you're playing the sport of dishonesty, if you're playing the sport of going the wrong way, you're going to end up the wrong way. If you're playing the sport of, oh, I'm actually this, but I'm pretending to be a that, you're going to be a little bit of that. And that malleability isn't a bad thing as long as you're being honest and discerning. There was this really great study I hope we can find and put up, which is that if you take students and who are hardcore on one side of an issue and you tell them to write an essay about the opposing side and then you bring them back in the next week and survey them about the issue, their opinions will have shifted dramatically, more so than any other way that they were able to measure in this large-scale meta-study we were looking at. It's just, if you just act open-minded, even if you think you're doing it for a fake reason, it is the best way to figure out what the truth is. You gotta be honest, though.
Yeah, that study, there was another study, I think there were two that we had seen, and one of them was students who weren't even particularly hardcore on an issue. They were just assigned a debate topic and told to research it. They were surveyed at the beginning before they did their debate research, and 41% of them, I believe, aligned with what they were assigned. So it wasn't something that they personally believed in, but they were assigned something, and if they believed in it, they were surveyed. After the debate, it was something like 75%, 73% that aligned with the opinion that they were given, essentially. So it's not even if you feel hardcore about something that your opinion could be changed if you're being dishonest. Even if you don't feel that strongly about something, if you just agree with someone for the sake of agreeing or disagree with someone for the sake of disagreeing, your opinion is likely to change.
Yeah. Yeah, it is likely to change, and you're likely to just take a further diversion from the truth, and you don't have unlimited time as a person to for anything. And the domain of what's being developed, what's being sucked up, where the truth is going, if you're not taking care of watching where it is, you can end up somewhere where you never thought you can be, and you just have thought you were in the same place the whole time. You have to keep an eye on the truth.
Yes.
And people really aren't keeping an eye on the truth. They're keeping an eye on ideology. They're keeping an eye on how they think they're supposed to act. And whenever that falls, which it will, the truth always wins. Things always come out. You can't uphold a lie forever. The generation dies off. When all of that goes, you're just left ridiculous. You don't want to be a mouthpiece for anything.
No.
You want to be the truth. You know, if you have a concept of God, you could be a mouthpiece for God, but I wouldn't call that something, right? I wouldn't call that anyone. I would call that much bigger, right? You could be a mouthpiece for good. You could be a mouthpiece for the truth.
Yeah.
But if you agree with every single conservative point of view, if you agree with every single liberal point of view, if you think every Democrat is horrible, if you think every single person who does finance is evil or every person in law is evil, you're just ridiculous. You're just absolutely ridiculous. You're as bad as someone who's just racist or guessing or just, anything. It just doesn't even matter. You're just useless.
Yeah, you have to be yourself. So.
Yeah, and it takes, honest assessment and approach.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to AI Watch, story time, YouTube recommendation, and bye.
For our AI Watch this week, they can read your mind. Basically, they have taken AI and trained it to, when looking at a brain scan, be able to decode the thoughts that a person's having. So they showed, I believe, several people an image, and then the AI, which is scanning their brain, would write down what it thought that they were thinking, and then they would either confirm or deny that fact.
Yeah, and it would say things like, oh, there is a girl in pink with black hair who looks like me. And people would say, oh, my God, that's what I was thinking. And it's so AI is, I guess, able to figure out what you're thinking.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. We're already there. For story time, I thought we'd tell the story of when I got my current full-time job. I had been flown out to different math conferences and different things before, but I hadn't flown too often, and I was never flown out like business class or anything like this before, sitting next to other fancy people on, like a flight like that. And it was maybe 6.5 hour flight. It's one of the longest flights I'd ever taken in my life at that time. And so I decided to download a game on my phone, which I hadn't before, which was Angry Birds. And then have like different things on my laptop I was going to watch. So then the plane's taking off. I put my headphones on attached to my laptop. I had music or a movie or something. I don't remember. And then I'm playing Angry Birds on my phone, this game, and I'm playing for a while. And I could kind of feel like people looking at me. I'm not sure. And after maybe 20, 30 minutes, a guy taps me, and he's back there, and he looks kind of mad. And I don't know what's going on. I take my headphones off. I'm like, oh, what's up? He's like, can you turn down the volume on Angry Birds, please? I guess it had been full volume on the phone. So I guess I wasn't mature enough for business class. I wasn't ready yet. But I was there, and I got the job. So whatever. But yeah, that was a funny moment. My YouTube recommendation for the week is a video by After School that illustrates really well in about 10 minutes the danger of spending too much time on your phone, and it's quite good. It's quite good.
And my bye for the week is bye. Butler, where are you?
Sounds weird in the headphones.
Yeah. You don't like my song? For our AI watch this week, they can read your mind.
For a story time.
No.
No, I think that was good.
What?
Isn't that essentially what the article says?
Yeah, but shouldn't we explain?
All right, fine.
For AI watch this week, they can read your mind.
Let's just all introduce it.
I'm a shrimp. Okay.
All right. Let's move to AI Watch and story time.
For AI watch this week, they now have AI that can scan your brain as you're having a thought and can basically decode.
Oh, wait. Hold on. Sorry.
What?
All right. Let's move to AI Watch, story time, YouTube recommendations, and bye.
For AI watch this week.
But it's silly.
Bye.
Should we do that?
Okay.
Yeah.